Welcome to the webinar. This is the first DOS webinar that we are having, and welcome everybody to this webinar. I would like to welcome all the people who are watching, and also our esteemed speaker. We have a very renowned esteemed speaker today, Dr. Arul Mozi Burman, who's going to be talking to us about the Lipi view and the Lipi flow. Dr. Varman needs no introduction at all. He's so familiar with the DOS, and I think for so many years he had been coming to our annual meetings. He's a leading ophthalmologist with an experience of 38 years in this field. He's completed his MBBS from Madras Medical College in 1980, and later he acquired his postgraduate diploma in ophthalmic medicine and surgery from Madras Medical College in 1987. He has a brilliant academic record of having secured gold medal for topping the MBBS examination and also secured the first place in his postgraduate diploma in ophthalmic medicine and surgery. He not only is an astute clinician but an experienced instructor also, and he's traveled in many countries and performed phacoemulsification cataract surgery as well as presented at a lot of national and international platforms. He's a master of phacoemulsification with extensive experience and has conducted 150 phaco training programs in India and abroad, and successfully trained more than 300 surgeons, including the American Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgeons. So thank you, sir, for coming here, and welcome to this program. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Naveen Sakhuja, who I know for in fact, for as long as I've been in ophthalmology, because he was my senior. No, he's not so senior, but yes, my senior at RP Center for Ophthalmic Sciences, and we have some of the very fond memories that we've shared together at RP Center. Dr. Naveen Sakhuja heads the clinic in Golf Links and is a flourishing practitioner and has a huge amount of experience in the topic that we are going to be discussing. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Mahajan sir, who's the president of Delhi Ophthalmological Society, and Dr. Bhalla, who's the treasurer of Delhi Ophthalmological Society, who have always stood by us in all our endeavors and in all our activities. So over to Dr. Varman for his talk today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Namrata. And hello to Dr. Balla, Dr. Mahajan, and Dr. Shakuja. And a warm welcome to all of you who are listening in. I'm going to talk about meibomian gland dysfunction, which is the most common cause of dry eye. And dry eye, as we all know, is probably the most common diagnosis today when anybody walks into your clinic. They could have other diseases like, glaucoma or cataract or allergic conjunctivitis, a whole bunch of that. But underlying fact is that a whole large percentage of people who walk into the ophthalmic clinic, be it any age, as in the low teens as well as the 60s, 70s, 80s, dry eye is something that we cannot give a pass or go by. And that's probably the most common diagnosis today. Another fact that is very interesting is the market of just the dry eye replacement drops and not the lubricating drops itself runs into several hundred crores.
Can we share the slides, please?
Yeah, we'll go to slide sharing.
Yeah.
So this is my talk. So we go on to the fact that all the studies show a very high incidence of dry eye, particularly the Asian community, as much higher than the Western community. By age, if you look at it, dry eye can be seen even as low as below 10 years of age. And of course, as age goes up, you can see a fair number of it going up much higher. Prevalence of dry eye symptoms by age and sex, of course, women are a little more affected in dry eye than men are. Evaporative dry eye is the more common dry eye. Aqueous deficiency dry eye is not as common, but that has a completely different treatment protocol vis-a-vis evaporative dry eye. There are several reasons for evaporative dry eye. We need not keep going into all of these. The most common cause of dry eye is going to be the meibomian gland dysfunction. When the meibomian gland does not function as well as it should, then you have issues about the lipid layer being very thin or insufficient or chemically not up to the mark. So in between blinks, the tear film breaks up and causes a lot of problems. One, the tear film is the most important aspect for the refractive component of the cornea. Once the tear film is broken up, the refractive component of the cornea comes down tremendously, and its capability to discern or to give you clear vision comes down. That is one. Two, of course, it can cause dryness, it can cause ileopathy, it can
Sir,
cause a chronic
sorry
inflammation.
to disturb.
Yeah.
Sir, we can't see your screen, sir.
We can't see your
I have
screen,
done.
Dr.
The
Vardhan.
slides
So
are
you
not
have
there.
to, yeah,
There's a
I
little
think
button at the bottom, green color button saying share screen. Just press that.
Can you see my screen?
No, then you have to choose which screen you want on this on your computer.
I had done that already.
so. You have to choose your PowerPoint screen, sir.
Just
The
choose
PowerPoint screen.
PowerPoint is
You have to open the
open, no?
PowerPoint
So-
first.
Share screen, done, and then choose. I had done that already, and that's what was there on. Okay, share. Good.
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
No,
Now.
it's okay.
Okay, let's go back from the beginning then.
Yeah.
Slideshow.
Sir, in slideshow, please.
Yeah, fine now.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
perfect.
these are the slides I was talking about, age and then sex prevalence, and then the evaporative dry eye being the most common reason for dry eye component. And meibomian gland dysfunction is the most common cause of evaporative dry eye. Just that not dry eye, both cataract surgery and refractive surgery depend a lot upon the corneal surface being perfectly wet and being a perfect refractive surface to get the best results. You do a fantastic cataract surgery or a good refractive surgery and you can have an unhappy patient, or a patient complains of poor quality of vision. So dry eye assumes a lot of importance, whichever way we look at it. So this is just a picture, a slide that shows meibomian gland dysfunction is the most common cause of dry eye. Well over 50% of patients or 80% of patients who have evaporative dry eye have got meibomian gland dysfunction. It's just a tip of an iceberg. You see it in all kinds of issues, whether the person is just having a dry eye, perimenopausal, glaucoma, on treatment, diabetics. Very important, this particular thing, video screen display screen users. The very fact that in a video display screen such as a computer, one has to look straight where the eye is fully open, and constant staring at a near focus with no blinking also causes more dry eye, and this becomes a vicious cycle. Dry eye, the fact that it becomes dry, inflammation, more dry eye, and reduced blinking. Each blink is a force where the two lid margins meet with a fair amount of force that forces open the meibomian glands. Reduced blinking or partial blinks because of a lifestyle issue. It can be reading a book or using a computer, anything. Anybody who's doing more near work with more concentration tends to blink lesser. The less you blink, the meibomian glands are not squeezed open by the natural blink mechanism. So they go into a stasis. They go into stasis, they go into backup, they go into convolutions, and they drop out. This becomes again a vicious cycle. So meibomian gland dysfunction starts off with many reasons. One thought it was only a matter of lack of certain omega-3 fatty acid was a cause that was one of the causes. It is, but it's not the most important. The most important cause is poor blink reflex or partial blinks that are done or reduced blinks. And this starts off a vicious cycle right from a very young age. And by the time the person reaches 20s, 30s, and 40s, the dry eye is well settled. It may not cause complete reduction of vision, but it can bring down the quality of vision, can cause a lot of discomfort, and also cause to bring down the amount of work output a person can give because of the chronic low-grade vision, irritation, watering, redness. Pathophysiology, there's no need for me to go through that. It is something to do. It is to do with the dry eye, increased hyperosmolality, the inflammations. The ocular surface itself gets altered, and all of this becomes a cycle. So what it can do from very, very minimal, mild, where it can be just not even noticeable or mildly noticeable, to very markedly noticeable, to even having dry spots on the cornea where it can stain, to having filamentary keratitis. It can have the whole gamut of presentation. So what are the investigations that you would do when somebody comes to you with dry eye? Plenty of these. The first one would be the tear breakup time that should be done before any drops is applied in the eye or any other test is done. So it should be actually an eye that has not been disturbed by any other tests or any other drops. A breakup time ideally should be done non-invasive, but using a dye, using fluorescein is equally good. One should do it in a particular setting where there is no draft and there's not too much of bright light, and you could put the patient on a slit lamp and check the time that it takes for the tear to break up and check out if it's occurring consistently at the same point, in which case it may not be a true breakup. Then you have to look at if there are any ocular surface disorders there. A good examination of ocular surface, looking for particulate matter, debris. Look for the tear margin, the tear film margin, the meniscus gives you an idea as to the amount or quantum of tears. Tear osmolality, if you're aware, if you have the instruments, does give you an added diagnostic feature, but it's not really necessary. You can do lysosome assay, we can do MMP9. Most important, just not doing the tear breakup time and the staining with the regular dye. You also use rose Bengal. Rose Bengal or Lissamine green also lets you have a better understanding of the surface of the eye. Schirmers are very, very important. One should do a Schirmers to find out the amount of tear secretion. So tear film meniscus, when you look at that, not only looking at the tear film meniscus is important, look at the lid margin. One can see inflammation on the lid margin. One can see telangiectasias on the lid margin. One can see blockage of the meibomian glands. You can see pouting. You can see inflammation and infection at the meibomian gland orifice. So all of these give you an idea as to whether the meibomian gland has got inflammation as well as got other dysfunctional issues. A slight pressure on the gland at that point on the lid margin will express the meibomian gland secretion. If it is clear, oily, and it comes out easily, then the glands are not blocked. If they are blocked minimally, you would find that it is a little bit turbid, and if it's blocked badly, you can see actually insipid material being pushed out, and sometimes nothing comes out where it is completely blocked and dysfunctional. Schirmers, and we not go through that. T-beauty, as I told you, one has to look at the interval between tell the patient to blink and stay without blinking for a few seconds. The minimum time should be at least 10 seconds. Ideally, tear breakup time should be over 15 seconds to be of any use. The same test, you can also look for any staining of the cornea. Non-invasive T-beauty is very, very useful because the very fact that you're putting in drops in the eye and putting in a dye itself can slightly alter the T-beauty. Non-invasive can be done by several methods. The simplest one would be to place the patient on a keratometer, just focus, tell him to blink, and then stay without blinking and keep waiting till the keratometer Myers get distorted. The same can be done just using the autoref tool. You can focus the patient with autoref, look at autoref Myers on the screen, and wait till the autoref Myers distort and take the time. These are all very easy ways of doing non-invasive T-beauty. Fluorescein, Lissamine green, rose Bengal staining is of great use to tell you what kind of an issue that you're facing. Osmolarity, if it's available, it is good, but if it is not, it's not so very important. It does give you an added advantage. Meibomian gland dysfunction is the most common cause of evaporative dry eye. How do we check the meibomian gland? As I told you, if you're going to see this kind of fine, oily drops coming out on pressure, and the lid margin is clean, does not have inflammation, no telangiectasias, then you probably have a good normal functioning meibomian gland. The other extreme, you find that the orifices are completely missing, a large amount of telangiectasias on the lid margin, and you can see even a certain amount of inflammation on the eyelash trauma. So this tells you that this is fairly advanced meibomian gland dysfunction. You can see pouting here. On pressure on this kind of person or a lid, you would find not so clear meibomian liquid coming out, secretion. It will be slightly turbid, but it is expressible. Pretty advanced here would be the paste-like material that comes out. In this kind of a lid, you probably can't express anything out at all. One way of looking at the Meibomian gland is to do infrared photography. Infrared photography gives you a clear picture of the Meibomian glands. Ideally, I would suggest looking at both the upper and the lower lid. This is an eye which shows near normal, very minimal distortion of the superior glands. Inferior glands are slightly blocked and engorged, but otherwise, this is not too bad a Meibomian gland. It's fairly normal. Maybe this person may have a T-BOT of about 10 or 12 with just conservative treatment with massage and external heat. He or she may get better. Vis-a-vis, here you find more blockage. You see distortions. The shape is altered. Some of them are shortened. The lower lid shortening is very significant. Dropout can be seen there, here, and here. So this would be very early Meibomian gland dysfunction. These patients will definitely do very well with the vector pulse therapy. This is fairly advanced. This is one way. When you look at the lower lid alone, you can get misled into thinking it's just a moderate, because you find here lower lid glands are not so very badly affected. You can see shortening here, dropouts here. But you look at the upper lid. If this has not been averted and examined, you'll completely lose out the fact that it's a very advanced, it's more than moderate Meibomian gland dysfunction. This here again, where you see the upper lid not as much affected, the lower lid much more. So it's very important to do the Meibomian gland mammography of both the upper and the lower lid. In a severe MGD like this, you'll be surprised to know that LipiFlow still works. Vector pulsation therapy may not work in this condition is the a general consensus, but surprisingly, even in this kind of a situation, the glands that are left over will be made to get back to function, and the patient gets back a fair amount of comfort from being a very, very severe dry eye patient. This is something that's very difficult to treat. Again, nothing lost in trying out, because you still have a certain number of glands that are persistent and present, and at least they would start working. So the treatment, there are several treatments for Meibomian gland dysfunction. The one that everybody used to talk about is wet heat. Then we all went on to using dry heat and massaging, because heat has to penetrate through skin, the orbicularis muscle, then the tarsal plate, and then reach the Meibomian glands, liquefy, and then the pressure should be sufficient to express it out. It's highly unlikely that the heat that you apply externally is going to work in anything but very minimal or mild amount of Meibomian gland dysfunction, where even without the heat, just the massaging will open up the glands. Anybody who has got more advanced blockage, dilatation, distortion, and dropout is not going to get help from a regular treatment such as doing a massage or external heat application. This is where vector pulsation therapy really helps, where the heat comes in from the inner surface of the lid, as well as the massaging. The pressure also comes from the inner surface. The cornea and the ocular surface is protected by a rigid shield, like a very rigid contact lens. Neither the heat nor the pressure goes on the eye, and the lid is held in place. And this treatment goes on for 12 minutes, where heat goes up to 37 degrees, and then the pressure goes up to 5 or 6 psi, and it's done in a graded fashion over a period of 12 minutes. Both eyes can be done simultaneously. The rhythmic heating as well as the rhythmic the pressure that is put on the lid causes the liquefaction of the inspissated material in the Meibomian glands, and the pressure gently squeezes it out. It's a pressure coming from superior to inferior in the upper lid and inferior to superior in the lower lid, and it gently squeezes it out in a physiological fashion. So with the treatment ends up, the glands are opened up. Post-treatment, the patient should continue a massage and some kind of a heat therapy, dry heat therapy, to keep the glands open. And one could continue the lubricating drops to give benefit to the patient. What you find with the vector thermal pulsation therapy is the high immediate patient satisfaction. You really don't see that the TBUT goes from 6 to 15 or 6 to 20. A patient with a TBUT of 6 may get a moderate improvement of TBUT immediately, maybe in the first week or 2 weeks. From 6, may go to 9, 10, or 12. But it does not jump from 6 or 5 to 15 or 20. But over a period of time, a month or two, you see much better TBUTs coming up. Shermers may not change very much, but what is very, very evident is the immediate patient satisfaction. And hardly anybody comes back with any complaints. I've been doing this now for a little over a year, and I have not had a single patient come back yet for a repeat treatment yet. But patients should continue the warm compress and lid massage to have a consistent and long-term efficacy of this treatment. The device, as I told you, uses 2 to 5 psi, and the temperature not goes to 35, it goes to 40 to 42 degrees. This is the cross-section of the activator. The heating is from inside, and the pressure is also from the outer surface inwards. So one way of looking at the function of the cornea or the tear film is how to look at the abrometry. This is just before and after using a lubricant in a patient who had complaints of dry eye with a poor TBUT. So you would find that the cornea really shows poor, a large amount of aberrations. And the moment that you put a tear film, a lubricant, it improves. Here is a patient after LASIK. Pre-LASIK, his cornea was perfect. So was his internal as well as the total. Post-LASIK due to dry eye, once the corneal surface shows increased aberrations, his quality of vision drops. So you have a patient who's unhappy in spite of being apparently 6/6 and refraction-wise close to 0. The same thing when you do LipiFlow, the same patient goes from having a poor corneal abrometry to good corneal abrometry and improvement in the quality of vision. So the corneal film the tear film is very important to having good outcomes post any kind of refractive surgery or a cataract. Post LipiFlow, you can see between the pre-LipiFlow corneal optics that shows a very poor, a large amount of aberrations. Post LipiFlow, you see the patient improve, and the quality of vision is definitely perceptibly much better. This is post LipiFlow again, pre LipiFlow, and post LipiFlow. All of these are immediate, taken in the first 2 weeks post treatment. Again, another post LipiFlow, a patient who had LASIK done, and immediately after that got complaints. So there are several studies on LipiFlow. I cannot go quoting all of them. All the studies show that LipiFlow, that is the vector pulsation therapy, definitely works, does give the patient better quality of vision, better TBUT, and it works for long periods of time, at least for 12 months. And it does help even persons who are long-term contact lens wearers who find using contact lenses for long periods is not comfortable. It gives at least a 4-hour increase in the contact lens wear time once the LipiFlow treatment is done. So what we need to do, not just treat dry eye after the patient comes to you after post-cataract or a post-LASIK or a post-SMILE. Check out these patients even before you do the treatment. If you're doing a multifocal lens or any other kind of an advanced intraocular lens placement in a patient, we all look at the macula very, very intently. You do an OCT to make sure that you're not putting in an eye that's got a poor macula. Do look at the tear film, do look at the abrometry, make sure that the corneal surface is good, the tear film is stable, and it's a good quality of a corneal tear film before you go ahead with this treatment in these cases. You could pre-treat them or treat them immediately post-operatively. So one is to treat the dry eye pre-operatively, other would be to do it post-operatively. Either way, you have to treat dry eye energetically to get the best quality of vision for our patients. Thank you.
Good, very good. Hello.
Yeah.
Anybody want to ask any question, please? If anybody is there in the audience.
Yes, sir. That was a wonderful presentation, Dr. Arul.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a lot of questions which have come in. One is, this is Dr. Guru Vara Prasad. And what they have found is how much it costs for one sitting and how many sittings have to be done. And what is the cost of this equipment, LipiFlow thermal?
Okay, the average cost that is charged by most people across the country is somewhere between about 25 to 35,000 per sitting for both eyes. One sitting is all that is necessary. In the last 1 year that I've been doing, I've never had to repeat a sitting in a particular patient yet.
But the literature says the effect lasts for about 6 to 9 months. So
Exactly what the literature says. But I insist that on one particular thing, that post-treatment, the patient should continue dry heat application as well as massaging of the lids constantly. If they have any kind of a lid margin disease, then I ask them to clean the lid margins with the appropriate solution. And with this continuous management, I haven't had to repeat one up to 1 year yet.
So what you mean to say is once with this vector pulsatile therapy, the meibomian gland ducts functional, and if you maintain it by the dry heat and regular cleaning, so this continues. The lid hygiene is maintained. The meibomian gland health remains.
My contention is the reason for somebody to develop meibomian gland dysfunction is poor blink reflex. So the blink reflex is not going to get better just because you opened up whatever glands that were blocked or dysfunctional. You have made the glands function better, but our patient is going to go back to the same lifestyle and is not going to be able to blink the usual natural blink pattern, which will keep his glands open. So one has to give support to the glands by keeping the glands open. So whatever secretion, whatever partial blinks keeps the gland without getting blocked again, so that they don't need a repeat treatment in a short period of time.
I think nicely answered. Congratulations, Dr. Burman, for the nice talk today evening. We really enjoyed it. And any other questions, sir? But my question is, you do the massage, you do the heat treatment, and still you need lubricating for a long heating.
I can't follow the question.
You are doing the massage as well as this warming heat treatment.
Yes.
But still you need lubricating for a long period. Lubricating agents.
Again, I'm not able
You're not getting it. You have to put eye drop, lubricating eye drop.
Asking.
Along with this, Dr. Mahajan, I think if I've got the question correct, he says along with this, do you continue using the lubricants?
Lubricating agents.
Yes, yes.
How long and how frequently?
The lubricants, again, the patient should be very clearly told the lubricants are not medications. They are only there to give comfort to the patient if they need it. Ideally, the person should, because this is again seen in persons who are using computers long periods, they should apply a drop of lubricant when they start work in the morning or whatever time they start their work. And then they reuse it if they find any symptoms. So you'd find that once the patient has undergone vector pulse therapy, that their use of lubricant drops down for something like about 6 or 7 times a day, down to about once, twice, or maximum 3 times a day. This is what the feedback you would get. The feedback is one, that their comfort level is increased, their quality of vision has got much better, they find it easy to drive at night, they really don't have to squint and squeeze the eye, they're able to work more comfortably, and their use of lubricants comes down very significantly to probably at least a level of 50% of what they were using earlier.
So another
You have to
question.
continue with the lubricant. Yeah. Dr. Vella, please.
Naveen, what is your experience, Naveen? You've been using this therapy for such a long time.
Now for about a little over a year and a half, almost 2. I've done about maybe 200, 250 patients by now. So firstly, I would agree with Dr. Varman that that the results are very good. They really are very good. And you see, the downside of this procedure is the cost, frankly speaking. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to that the patient has to spend quite a large sum of money for what he perceives is a relatively minor problem of dryness. But the patients who are using only home heat, for example, or heat from home, the heat does not manage to actually reach the meibomian gland well. It is flushed away by the blood vessels, which is what is the reason for the effectivity of the LipiFlow. And I have also not actually over this period required to repeat it. I had repeated it for one patient who was a patient of Sjogren's, and she sort of had a partial response, but ultimately required it again after about a year. I have had more than 3 or 4 patients saying that they want to come back, saying they just want a repeat done anyway because they felt so much more comfortable the first time. So definitely I definitely feel that there is an improvement in the thing. And if I can just for a second show you, just give me a second, please.
And what is a lot of people have asked, what is the cost of this equipment?
Just, can I just show you for a second, sir?
Yeah, please.
This is a patient. In fact, I asked her to send me today's photograph. She's been coming to me for years, for years before we had this thing. And sometime in October 2018, we did the LipiFlow for her because she's got this chronic dry eye and more, for some reason, more in one than the other. This is her, she has sort of followed up now and told me that she feels so significantly better, and the congestion and the overall symptoms are better, though she's not completely all right. So I feel that yes, it does help.
It does help a lot. Like Dr. Naveen said, basically the patient satisfaction immediate is amazing.
Yes.
You don't have a single patient who tells you that I don't feel a difference.
That's correct.
What about, there are a lot of other equipments in the market which are similar, and
There's IPL, there's an intense pulse light, which is one. Intense pulse light is one method, but
yeah,
the
it
downside,
does intense pulse light is
yeah, the downside of intense pulse light is one, it needs to be repeated 3 or 4 times. Secondly,
so
it's
how could you, yeah.
a little painful, and one of the also can cause a little depigmentation along the lid margin. You know, some little area over here to get depigmented, it hurts and burns a little. There's basically a small burn where the telangiectatic vessels are burnt and they stop releasing the cytokines, and as a result of which the inflammation reduces and the glands tend to open up. But it has a few downsides, and also it has to be repeated. Otherwise, that is the alternative method.
And
May I
how
ask,
would you,
Dr. Verma?
I think,
Sorry, sir?
Dr. Verma, you select your patient, which patient you want to do this therapy, or you just do on every patient?
You're asking me?
No, Dr. Verma.
anybody could answer.
I didn't get the question.
You can also answer. You also have a lot of
I'll
experience.
also let Dr. Varman tell us what he feels.
Yeah.
What is the question?
Question is raised, you select the patient for whom this procedure is to be done, or you do on every patient?
No, I can't hear the question clearly. Can somebody repeat it for me, please?
I have heard you say, Dr. Varman. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Dr. Varman?
Yes, I can. I can.
Okay, so his question is basically, how do you do your patient selection? So patient selection, as far as how I see it, is that firstly, the patient has to be symptomatic. It should not be done merely because we find a reduced LLT. You know, if there's a reduced LLT level alone is not a good enough reason to do it. There are many patients who have reduced LLT but don't have so much symptom.
Exactly. You see a patient who's got a TBOT of 7 or 8, and that person is absolutely comfortable. It's advisable to tell him or her that you have dry eye, do this heat treatment at home and use lubricants. I would choose a patient who comes to me with complaints to undergo the treatment. So the basic result in this treatment is the immediate and long-term comfort that a patient gets post-treatment. If the patient has got no discomfort, he or she is not going to find a great advantage after undergoing the treatment. So criteria, yes.
One other thing, if I may just say, is that usually what I do is even the symptomatic patients, I put them on a 2-week trial of medical management, in which I give them omega-3, I give them several 2 lubricants, including lubricant including a gel, and insist a lot on hot fermentation. If this functions for me for 2 ways. One, it functions like a therapeutic trial, because even though the hot fermentation done at home is not as effective, but they get to know that yes, it does work. And 2, the ones who really respond well don't need to go through the LipiFlow. Then you might as well carry on like this sometimes.
Often we need to do that because, as you mentioned, the treatment is expensive, and that also helps to prime the patient that we've tried everything and you're not getting better. Then we are offering you this as an option. where it will definitely work. And that also gives you that breathing time, or the time that to make the patient understand about the disorder and the treatment possible.
Till what
Dr.
maximum?
Naveen, you told you to use lubricating and omega acid.
Dr.
Do you use
Maharaj,
anti-inflammatory drugs?
I can't hear.
It's not there.
What he's saying is that along with lubricants, do you use omega-3 fatty acid in all these patients?
Yes, see, omega-3 fatty acid at one time was touted as the ultimate therapy for mammalian gland dysfunction, but newer studies now really don't give it as much importance. So in the last 3 months or so, I've not been using omega-3 fatty acids as much as I was doing earlier. Yes, I was using it earlier. Now it's not as much.
Until what grade of severity do you think this works? Suppose you find just about less than 10 meibomian gland ducts remaining. Will you still try? Or do you
Yes, of course. I would tell the patient that I'm not too sure. We show them the pictures and say, you're in a really bad shape. If I don't do the treatment, these 10 or 15 glands will disappear in the next 6 months or 1 year, and you're going to be in a very, very bad dry eye situation. So far, even the so-called very advanced mammalian gland distortions and dropout, the patient has come out with subjectively feeling much better.
And in this very severe MGD, do you repeat the thing? Because it's very severe. You still feel that just one session is enough?
See, whether it is one gland that is blocked or all the 30 glands that are blocked, the heat goes to all the whole lid area, heats it up and squeezes it. So repeating a condition just because it didn't open up, the only time that can occur, if one did not place the PI in a proper way in the lid was not placed absolutely perfectly inside the PI or both inside and outside, and the pressure did not get down to the correct place. I think of the only that way you probably need to repeat it. Otherwise, I've never had to repeat it so far. Actually, other way around, like Dr. Sahuja said, there are patients now ending up with 1 year who say that I've been feeling so good, I'm ready to come back for another treatment just as a preventive measure. They are offering to come back, and we are trying to push them off saying, wait, let's see if you really get this problem back again.
A lot of people want to know the cost of the equipment, sir.
Cost of the equipment, I think talk to J&J. They have the equipment in about 3 or 4 different models. It's one model which is one does everything, which is expensive, or you can just buy the Lippi scan, which is the mammography, and you can buy the Lippi flow alone, or just those two, or any one of them. The Lippi flow alone is a particular cost. The Lippi scan has a different cost. And along with that, if you have the tool that measures the thickness of the lipid layer, interferometry, it's more expensive. So it's a question of how you want to bundle it. I personally have bought the Lippi flow and the Lippi scan.
If it's only Lippi flow, how much is it, sir? A lot of people have asked this question. That's why
I think it's somewhere about 26 to 30 lakhs range.
Okay.
Do you think there is? Do you think that people buy just Lippi flow alone for the diagnostic part, it is good enough? Because for the therapeutic part, then probably they can if they have another maybe another device which is not that expensive, if that can be
this is where
the diagnostic purposes.
Right, Namrata, I like to answer this in a different way. Mammography is really useful. It tells you exactly what is the structure of the mammalian gland. If the structure is poor, function is also poor. So mammography, there are multiple products available. They all cost around the same. They all cost somewhere between 7 to 10 lakhs. A mammography alone, standalone. So that aside, choosing between doing a vector pulsation therapy and a light therapy, the light therapy, though it could cost lesser per sitting, you have to do at least 3 sittings. When you combine the cost of the 3 sittings, it comes to probably about 30%, 25 to 30% less than the cost of doing a vector pulsation therapy. The cost of equipment also is not very much lesser when you look at the cost of one of these light therapy machines is also somewhere between 15, 20 lakhs. It's not very inexpensive too. And if you look at 3 sittings, at least 3 sittings, and sometimes you have to repeat it after 6 months, definitely to get the best results. Then when you put all the sum of those amounts together, the cost of vector pulsation therapy suddenly does not appear to be very large. To the patient, the difference is that he's paying it at one go, 30 or 35,000 rupees at one go, while if he's getting the light therapy, he's probably paying for it once in a month at the rate of around 7,000, 8,000 or 10,000 per sitting for both eyes. So it's a very, as far as cost is concerned, the difference is not very huge. One has to look at the efficacy and the patient satisfaction before you go in for a particular modality of treatment.
There's a question from Dr. Ravi Jeet Singh from Amritsar, I think. What is the role of manual gland expression in refractory cases of MGD where secretions are too thick for LipiFlow to handle? Are there any refractory cases which cannot be
So
treated with LipiFlow system?
yeah,
Not
I
really.
think this is a question which is asked by many other people also, that can you do something like probing of these meibomian glands?
Yes, there are probes that are available which look very much like blunt needles. I've been trying this because this was available in one of the international conferences. I bought these and came. They're disposable. It's very messy, very difficult. You have to give. It's pretty painful to the patient, so the lid has to be anesthetized. You have to do it under a microscope and use a clamp, and then probe each one of those ducts individually. It takes quite a bit of time. And imagine doing 30 ducts in each lid and 4 lids. You're talking about 120 ducts to be probed. And then this becomes, and it's quite painful. The patient ends up with a very inflamed lid margin and not really great immediate relief. So probably if you see that post LipiFlow, it is so very insipid and nothing came out, those particular glands alone, one can try probing.
What about you mentioned that after cataract surgery you should do it after 3 months. So Dr. Naveen, you also would agree the same? I mean, why do you want to keep a gap of? I understand not after say 4 weeks because you've done a surgery, but why do you want to keep a longer gap between the cataract surgery
Yes,
and
in
the
a patient
LipiFlow?
who's raised, I would keep a longer gap actually. I would not do it immediately because of the fact that the patient is immediate post-op. But I also think that here you can talk of doing it pre-operatively, doing a view evaluation at least, because power calculations are seen to change with the poor tear film. You know that. So if you can improve that tear film prior to the surgery.
The other reason to wait for 3 months would be immediate post-op. The very fact that we're using so many drops, that itself causes a bit of a dry eye. So you wait for all the drops to be tapered off.
Yeah.
And then you see if the dry eye really persists and take it up.
Agreed.
And are both the eyes done at the
What,
same sitting?
There's another.
Yes.
And what about Demodex? How many of us have seen Demodex? I mean, in North India, we've not picked
Demodex actually
up too much.
I've seen a little bit primarily in acne rosacea.
Okay.
And you can use tea tree oil to clean it out. It responds very well to tea tree oil. Actually, this is one of the situations in which intense pulse light might help because that actually destroys the Demodex organism, which LipiFlow cannot do. But tea tree oil works quite well.
Yes,
And
it
if there's a
does.
70% dropout, there's a question, if there's a 70% dropout, would you use a therapeutic procedure for that? 70% dropout of the meibomian glands.
Definitely, yes. I would.
Why not?
Still go ahead.
Would you? I would say, is it not more necessary that those remaining 30% glands, you can actually sort of get them to reactivate?
Okay, so do you think, in your experience, what is the maximum number of sittings that you would have, given to the patients, and have patients improved in just a single sitting also?
100% of my patients have improved with a single sitting so far. Again, I'll use the word so far. And again, I will emphasize on the patient's subjective satisfaction and improvement subjectively is so very marked that it is very encouraging to use this product. I'm sure I would come across some patients who will need a repeat, but so far I have not done it yet. I'm not needed to do it yet.
And this is specifically for you, Dr. Naveen. Dr. Harshita Mittal wants to know what is your experience with LipiFlow and how many patients have come back from retreatment?
How many patients have come back for retreatment? Well, my experience, like I said, I have been doing for the last almost a year and a half, and I have not really needed to repeat it except on 2 occasions. One I told you was a patient with a severe Sjogren's. There was one more gentleman who needed it repeated. But otherwise, majority of them respond within about 2 weeks or a week of treatment. In fact, even immediately after you do the LipiFlow, they say that my eye is feeling a little lighter and definitely feeling better. The heat, what has to be really understood is that the heat is being given from the inner surface of the lid, which is actually where the meibomian gland is. The meibum melts at 40 degrees centigrade, and we are heating the gland to 42.5. At 42.5, that meibum, which has actually become like butter, becomes like olive oil again. And then there is a pressure with a little balloon pump which is put there, and that flushes the whole thing out. So the procedure is almost spa-like actually in its simplicity, because it is one of those few procedures where we can tell a patient that there is no side effect. To be very honest, I've had it done on my own eye between 2 patients.
How did you feel after doing it in your own eye?
I have done it on my eye. I actually even done it on my son, who's a computer engineer. So he's 16 hours, 14 hours on a screen, and there is a significant improvement. You do feel like when you go back home and you watch television at night, you feel like doing this, squeezing eyes and saying, because that dry sensation is there in our eye at the end of the day. That sensation goes. The ability to tolerate the screen becomes significantly better.
No, to really,
That sensation how long?
No, to really appreciate this treatment, I would suggest that anybody who has doubt about this treatment get personally one of their eyes done.
Yeah,
you would see a phenomenal difference when you do just one eye. I've done that for myself out of just a trial, and for 6 months I could feel a difference between the 2 eyes.
Yeah.
Sensation.
That's good.
It's just the easiest way to get convinced is to get one eye done, even if you do not have dry eye.
In any case, whatever we do, any procedure that we do always has some downside in general for all our procedures. And this is fortunately one of those things which has got no downside. There's nothing. You just,
Exactly.
at best, it will not work.
And one question
That
is
also
that
is hardly safe.
treatment
Namrata?
is the duration of treatment
Dr. Namrata?
12
Yes.
minutes. It can be graded according to the severity. Doctor can control the amount of treatment, duration of treatment. Like in mild, he may not give 12 minutes, he can give lesser. And in moderate to severe, he can grade the duration of treatment, sir?
Theoretically, you can change. There's a pattern at which the heating occurs, as well as the pattern at which the pressure also switches on and switches off. I guess you have the ability to change it, but I don't see any reason for one to change that. And it has been calculated that a 12-minute treatment works best for everybody. To shorten it does not give any kind of advantage. I don't know if there's any use in lengthening it beyond 12 minutes.
But most of the studies which have been published are not double mask studies where they have done. So although the symptomatic treatment relief is there, patients feel much better. But scientifically saying, we cannot compare it with other methods of treatment like ThermaFlow, intense pulse light, and other kinds of treatment. So I think that thing is there. Although symptomatic relief definitely is there, as you and Dr. Sakhuja has mentioned, sir.
No, there is. I am not sure of the study. There is a study which they measured the osmolality levels. Osmolality is actually considered one of the best parameters to check what is the state of the dry eye, because it is one of the most sensitive indicators. And there is a study, I don't have it offhand, but I know that there is a study in which they have measured the osmolality levels post LipiFlow and found that it is definitely improved. Even in intense pulse light, it is improved. It is not that it is not improved in that. It is improved in the other procedures as well.
Right.
So, Dr. Arul, how many patients have you treated so far? Dr. Kantham?
Not really sure about the number. I think it's about more than 150 patients so far.
Okay. So, apart from this, have you had any complications, Dr. Praveen and Dr. Arul? Have you had any problems or complications, or with this modality?
Oh, just as Dr. Naveen said, it's one of the treatments where you have no side effects. You have a patient that's absolutely happy, and the word that you use is perfect. It's like I tell my patients too, it's like going to a spa. It's like getting a facial done for your lids alone. That's what
So
I tell them.
it's
It's
a
very pleasurable treatment.
very expensive lead spa bath, isn't it?
That's right. But
But
believe me, you have patients who after 1 year are knocking at the door to come back for the treatment. Where we tell them, you wait. What's the big hurry?
so what is your opinion about
Okay.
other lid warmers like hot eye masks, eye masks, and infrared goggles, infrared warming goggles? Any of the panelist or Dr. Varman has experience about those warming?
The thing is that one thing that we've understood over the years is that the wet heat, where we told our patients to take a bowl of hot water and then do fermentation of the lid margin, does not work as well. Dry heat works better. How to get the heat to a particular temperature? These kind of electric masks, or even the one that goes into the microwave oven for 30 seconds, the gel, and then place it on the eye, is more reliable and gives you a better penetration compared to telling the patient to use water and hot water. So it does help, agreed. I would still use that for somebody who's got very, very minimal meibomian gland dysfunction. All the glands are functional. They're slightly blocked, maybe tortuous, then I would use that. It still works. And physical massage, yes, it does not work. But how many patients are going to do it enough number of massage over the enough number of time? Vis-a-vis, after you've done the vector pulse therapy, even a half-hearted heat therapy and a half-hearted massage maintains the gland in an open status. So that's my belief with the heat and massaging. Dr. Naveen, what do you have to say?
I think I agree. Most of that. I have no experience with the infrared goggles, but that the heating packs that you put in the microwave, I think they're made by a company called Brooder. If I'm not.
Brooder is available for
Yeah.
about 700 rupees or so.
That's correct. So you put it in the microwave and then put it on the eye and wear it, and it provides a lot of heat. The only issue, I fully agree with Dr. Varman here, that in mild cases it works, or maybe these days, when we can't see the patient or do anything at all, and you just tell them at home when they call that you can try the hot compresses, and that will sort of help. But the problem is that in a severe case, it does not actually manage to melt the secretions.
Dr. Mamata, are you doing something being in the cornea and refractive unit? You are doing that unit. Are you doing something?
So I think the order is not coming, but as far as we are concerned, we have available all the devices and the equipments, and so we are comparing 2-3 devices with each other, because we have them placed here, and we've yet to analyze our results. So we have a ocular surface, OSA ocular surface analyzer, and then we have that MeView and MeView Flow, which is from another company, and we have this LipiView and LipiFlow also. So we are comparing all the devices with each other, and will come out with the results soon.
Okay, yes.
Another question is, what is the incidence of Demodex you find in your cases of blepharitis, sir? 2-3 people have asked this question, sir.
Okay, Demodex is kind of not very common, but it is more common than we think. We miss out quite a bit. We diagnose everybody as blepharitis or a squamous blepharitis or just a blepharitis and leave them alone. If you see a blepharitis and you treated it and you're sure that the patient has followed your instructions and done proper scrubbing and proper cleaning, it doesn't get better in 1 month's time, then one should look at the other issues like Demodex is one. You should have access to a good microbiologist who's willing to you will have to pull out a few lashes, put them in a cover slide, and then send it there, and they'll have to try to look at it and give you a diagnosis. And tea oil does help, but it takes weeks to months before it starts to work. You may have to have the patient on tea oil treatment for up to even 2 to 3 months. It's quite difficult. You have to handle the patient during the difficult period. They don't get better. They're quite unhappy. But then eventually it all clears up. So this is a small number. We probably are not catching them because we're not looking for them. So my advice would be at 1 month or maximum 6 weeks of proper treatment of blepharitis if it doesn't clear up. There are several people in whom it clears up in 2 weeks, comes back after 3 or 6 months, fine, that is just blepharitis. But those in whom it does not clear up with consistent, proper treatment in a fairly cooperative patient, then you please look and see if it is Demodex. One way to actually just send the eyelashes under a cover slip on a slide for examination to confirm it.
Another question is about free tea oils. Is it available? By what name?
Tea oil,
Deployed, yeah.
surprisingly, is available in the cosmetic shops.
Yeah, it's available in all the.
In the cosmetic shops, not in the medical shops. Pretty irritant on the eye. It's quite difficult to use. The patient is very unhappy, but it works.
So, apart from this, Dr. Balla, do you have any questions?
Yeah, ma'am. Some people have asked that after treating this, what is your regime of treatment? How do you follow up the patients? Do you use lubricant? Then what lubricant do you use? Do you use antibiotics like azithromycin or systemic tetracyclines?
I don't use any systemic therapy, and some patients I may put them on omega-3 fatty acids. Of course, lubricating drops as per need of the patient, to leave it to their choice. They actually, these patients don't come back. They really don't come back. Now, Dr. Naveen, what would you say?
I agree. Though I actually do keep them on omega-3. And I do keep them on a little bit of lubricant. I also try and stress that do little hot compress, but like Dr. Varman is saying, they become a little half-hearted, because naturally when the symptoms become better, it's quite a tedious process, this hot compress to do at home. So the compliance is in any case poor. They just don't do it. But they said they respond. So.
Clear-cut diagnosis of MGD where the patient is not, and that's a practical situation, patient is not able to afford this treatment. In those cases, what would you advise, sir? Besides the wet heat, what are the other modalities?
I would advise dry heat. Then I would, in a patient who really cannot afford that, maybe we'll try doing mechanical expression under the microscope after anesthetizing the lid. But eventually, all of this doesn't help very much. It's just trying to help the patient. Let's look at the cost if somebody were to take omega-3 fatty acid in the required dose for 1 year. Calculate that cost and a cost of LipiFlow. It's only the matter of coming up with the money at one shot rather than spending it over a period of 1 year.
Other than the heat needed.
There's a question, another question. Do you give cyclosporin eye drops routinely to your dry eye patients? If yes, for how long? And what is your experience with punctal plugs? This is not to do with MGD, but
really good question. Cyclosporin eye drops will be reserved for those who have ocular surface inflammation. So the eye should be highly inflamed and not really responding to the first line therapy. I would actually start somebody on cyclosporin only after evaluating the tear film, tears for MMP9. The kit is freely available, not very expensive. It's not 100% accurate, but accurate enough for you to choose the patient, fairly accurately. Another way to look at who would respond to cyclosporin are those in whom, in the dry eye treatment, the eye is still inflamed, you're tempted to use low-dose steroids like fluoromethalone, and they get better. Now, these patients, you can't keep them on fluoromethalone or loteprednol for months and years together. Then you think about switching those patients to cyclosporin. Cyclosporin, unfortunately, is also expensive. You start it off, use it for 6 weeks to 8 weeks. And if you discontinue, the whole inflammation tends to come back after a few months. So you may have to kind of do your own pattern of treatment where you bring down the application to just once a day or once in 2 days and keep it going for months and, almost a year altogether. Then it kind of, what cyclosporin does is only bring down the surface inflammation. The same thing can be achieved by putting in any anti-inflammatory drop, which is a steroid, but that's going to have a lot of side effects. One does not want to use Nepafenac over a period of time for a year or so. So cyclosporin does help. And punctum plugs are fantastic. They should be aimed for patients who have a low Schirmer's.
That's right.
Ideally, the ones that you're going to do the LipiFlow are the ones who have not low Schirmer's. They have moderate Schirmer's or a normal Schirmer's, and then they have a dry eye. If somebody has a Schirmer's of 3 or 5, then LipiFlow by itself may not work. So you should probably be looking at putting in a punctum plug, evaluating the patient, then looking at the gland, and then seeing whether you can also do a LipiFlow.
Also, there are 2 more drops that I want to just bring up here if I can. There's a drop called Rebacel, which I'm not sure how many everybody's using. It contains a product called Rebapamide. It's originally developed in Japan, and it's available in India by the trade name of Rebacel. Rebapamide is a mucin stimulant. So it actually reduces surface tension on the cornea and thereby allows better spreading. There's another drug like this called Dicosol, also available originally from Japan. I don't think Dicosol is available here, but I have experience of using both Rebacel and Dicosol. And Rebacel, patients with Rebacel are quite comfortable because what it does is it smoothens the entire reduces the surface tension to allow better lubrication. Dicosol, on the other hand, also stimulates aqueous production, like pilocarpine and all are supposed to do. So once Dicosol is available here, then of course it'll be a great thing. But they're also available on Amazon on the net, both of them.
There's one more question. It's a theoretical question. Very severe MGD and patient is affording another extreme. Can you combine the LipiFlow and intense pulse light in that patient where the ducts are very minimal, maybe just 3 to 4 ducts? And
I'll explain it to you differently. An ideal treatment protocol for a person having meibomian gland dysfunction would be to do a LipiFlow, a vector thermal pulsation therapy first, so to open up the gland, then continue after 3 to 6 months with the intense light pulsation therapy, which improves the blood flow. And a combination of these would probably be the ultimate treatment protocol for the meibomian gland dysfunction, theoretically. But if you look at the cost involved, it's probably cheaper to get 2 eyes operated with a multifocal lens than get this done. So that's the whole catch again. But probably looking at it purely theoretically, yes, a combination of these two makes a whole lot of sense because physically, the vector pulsation therapy does nothing but express the gland, open up the gland, and that's it. And the light pulse therapy can improve the blood flow to these glands and then probably make them function better. Agreed that both put together makes more sense than each one of them separately.
I think from my side, I've covered most of the
Any
questions.
more questions? Link is getting distorted everything.
Another question is, can you, if it's possible, demonstrate how to do manual massage of the lids to express out after you have done this thing, dry heat, after you have delivered the dry heat to the patient, how do you do the manual massage of the lids to express out these secretions?
Teach the patient to massage the upper lid from up down gently, but you can't press too hard, and the lower lid from down upwards. That's about all. There's nothing more to that except that it's only done for about 10 seconds, 15 seconds each lid after you applied the appropriate heat, dry heat.
And how is the response in patients, particularly MGD because of Stevens-Johnson syndrome?
Oh, that's a completely different kettle of fish. Treatment of that kind of a condition is to treat the ocular surface. Ocular surface is highly scarred, and that is has pathology. Trying to treat the meibomian gland is not going to be the aim there. Maybe after doing all the treatment, appropriate treatment to get rid of the pathology on the ocular surface, and you made it as much as possible. Maybe, I don't think the role of vector pulsation therapy has got much to play in this kind of a scenario. It's probably minuscule and it to be in specific chosen patients. I mean, you agree with Dr. Naveen with that?
Yes, okay. In Stevens-Johnson, I don't think it will be so much benefit because it is so badly scarred, the surface. The mucin secreting cells are finished. The aqueous secreting cells are finished. There is no lipid. So that's a totally different, entirely different discussion, I think.
And there's another question. Does it cause any pressure on the globe? If that is so, then in patients with
it is vaulted, so it doesn't cause any pressure.
So there is no touch or pressure on the globe.
No. No.
So it can be safely done in patients of glaucoma.
Yeah, of course.
Do the patients with combined meibomian gland disease and allergic conjunctivitis respond as well to LipiFlow, or any modifications do you advise in these patients?
You treat the allergic condition also after that. You cannot just stop the treatment. Of course, it will help. And once you treat the allergy, they get even better.
And any adverse effects you account? Any adverse effects of LipiFlow, sir?
On allergic conjunctivitis patients, no.
Per se,
Per se, no.
I think they said that there were no problems or complications with it as such. So I think we've had a great session.
Namaste,
And
dear.
would like to, yes, sir. I came back because my thing got frozen, so I had to reconnect. So I think we had a
understand.
great session. Thank you, Naveen. Thank you so much, and thank you, Dr. Arul, for your great inputs. And I think lots of doubts were cleared as to how many times, because this used to be one of the apprehension that do you need to call the patient again and again. And I think you cleared it all, that you don't have to call the patient again and again. And it is useful even if the glands are not, 70%, 75% gone, then also it has a role to play. So thank you so much, and we would like to thank Dr. Arul Mozi Barman, Dr. Naveen Sakuja, of course, our president, who's been so encouraging and so supportive all the time, and Dr. Bhalla, and J&J, Johnson and Johnson. Johnson and Johnson needs to thank us this time, isn't it, Mr. Jaswinder and Mr. Gaurav, who's the webinar team, who see that these webinars go effortlessly. Please do suggest all the topics that you people would want to have webinars on, so that the same can be organized by the Delhi Ophthalmological Society. So thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Namrata.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.